This is a rebuild of the Olympia Cremina steam wand valve. Most of the time you do this rebuild when it's on the machine. It's one of the simpler things to approach, but as this is in our full rebuild series, I've got it in my hands and we'll do it on the bench. To get the insert, you either have red or white generally. I have this red one. You push down on the edge of the insert and it pops up. On the machine, this is actually a bit more stable process. Remove the screw. From the inside. There's the screw and washer. Work off the knob, and then we have our this is a 17 millimeter, which I have pre-loosened a little bit. We take off the retaining nut, set it aside, use the knob as a tool to loosen and back the steam wand out, or the valve body out. Okay, once that's backed out and loose, here we have the worn O-ring washer, which we're going to replace, and the very hard and deformed bib gasket that's on the end. I'll go ahead and take off my knob and set it aside. At this point, you take your probe tool and work off the O-ring, whichever way is handiest to get off. Oh, I think I'll take it off the other way. This is quite a sharp tool that I didn't exactly need that much. Okay, there's the old O-ring. Now, with some luck, this brass screw inside of here is quite small. It's buried down inside the old seal. And this is in a rotating cup at the end. You pretty much have to hold this cup with your fingers. If you put it in a vise or try to use a vice grips or some other squeezing tool, you really risk the damage, to damage this thin cup. So we get the appropriate size screwdriver and we hope for the best. Now, we don't want to force the screw, we don't want to break the screw, but they're often in a way welded into that seal, so that's what I assumed. It's about, most of the time that screw is locked, and you really don't want to force it, because if you break that screw, it can be broken off here just on the top of it, and you can actually break it off down in the socket, and that's a real problem. You'd have to replace the whole valve. My solution to this is to take quite a shortcut, and I go ahead and burn the old seal out. And you need some tool by which to grab it. Propane torch, it doesn't produce enough heat to melt the brass. I have some water here for cooling, and I simply with the tip, with the rubber, and this is something that you're not going to harm any of your metal parts, but you get kind of a dual purpose. Yeah, so it's a bit exciting at times. You get a dual purpose. One is to get rid of that seal, and two is to loosen the screw.
Do be careful not to burn yourself.
Right. I don't have the best work surface to be doing this on. I usually do it over the cement, so I don't have to worry about it. But you just kind of really give it a good flame on. And this is quite a shortcut. I ruined one screw, and that's the only time I'm ever going to do that. That's generally enough to really. We'll go ahead and cool that down. And once you have crispy crittered that seal, most of it will just rub right out with a cloth. And then, once again, now that it's cool, you work it out, and it'll crumble right out of there. And it makes it very handy. Now you've got just your screw is visible, and it should just turn right out with no effort whatsoever. A very nice little technique. That if you break that screw, it's a very, very precise size with a very small head. Now a very simple procedure to take the new bib washer, which is the name for that fat flat washer in the end of a valve, BIBB, and start my screw down into it. You simply, by hand or holding the collar in your fingers. As I said, it's very difficult to put a tool on that cup. Now this screw you tighten until it seats, because the socket that the screw goes into is only so deep, and we screw it to the bottom. Notice that it's flat along the top. We take our new O-ring, and I generally do this by hand because I don't want to tear it. Get it started. Work it over the collar. You can use a tool on this as well, but which I might do in a second. I just don't want to either poke a hole in my finger or tear the ring. The new gaskets and seals are quite flexible. You really have very little to worry about. You can't overstretch them. Now when you assemble, you want to make sure you take a little bit of down 111 just on the ring. You don't want it on the bib washer. I try to be conservative with this. Not that the expense is that you just really don't want too much lubricant. We'll just put this right on the O-ring. A little bit on the threads won't hurt. And with the new seal, with that new O-ring, you both push and turn because it has to enter the cylinder. Alright, that's with that new washer on the very end. It's quite soft, and you can overturn it and damage the washer quite easily. So you just finger tighten it. On goes the retaining nut. As I said, usually this is done on the machine. Tighten. Sometimes give it a little loosening. Check it. And as you can see, the rest of the assembly is straightforward with the screw and the insert. I usually do this after it's on the machine because we need to hold this with a tool and we don't want to break the knob. But now your steam valve is rebuilt.